Today, I want to look at three questions. Why did this war between the United States and Iran start? How will this war end? And what will happen after this war ends? And to answer these three questions, we need to discuss the nature and structure of our reality. And the first thing you need to understand, which is very hard, is that our world is a hallucination. It's a collective fantasy, all right? So to understand this idea, let's look at Plato's Allegory of the cave. And so in this cave, we're deep inside the earth and it's dark. There's some light coming in, but not much. And we're all chained in a line together, okay? And there's about 1 million of us. We're on the floor and we're chained to the ground. And we can't really move. We can't get up, we can't move around. Even our necks are shackled. So we can't turn around and see the world around us. Okay, so there's about 1 million of us all sitting down and staring at a wall together. Okay, and this wall is blank. Behind us is great fire. And there are people around this fire, okay? We don't know who they are, but they are free to move around. And what they do is this: they take puppets and then they reflect the puppets onto the wall, creating shadows. And we're mesmerized by these shadows because before we're staring at a blank wall, and now there are these moving shadows. And we think these shadows are real because we don't know any better. So we give them names. Okay, we give them names and we create a language in order to tell stories about these shadows. And this becomes really our collective reality, okay? So another way of saying this is that reality is a collective conscious which is really a hallucination. Okay? All right. So there are certain things about this reality that we need to keep in mind. Okay? So first of all, what's really important to understand is that what creates this reality is our conscious, our imagination, our perception. Not anyone else, us, okay? So in other words, the wealth in the society is our consciousness. The amount of thought we put into something. And so let me give you an example. Let's just say that I were to ask you to make a vase to sell on the marketplace, okay? While you're making this vase, if you are listening to music, if you are chatting with a friend, if you're not fully conscious and focused and attentive about making this vase, it won't be very good. But if you are completely focused on creating the most beautiful vase you can, and you're not distracted by anything, then this vase will be beautiful and therefore more valuable in the marketplace. Okay? So in other words, it is our conscious attention that creates wealth in this world. And it is really money or capital that extracts and stores our consciousness and turns it into wealth. All right? So that's a really important concept that most people don't understand, but you need to understand this if we are to understand the nature of reality itself. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to understand. This reality is structured to extract our consciousness in order to create wealth for the elite, for these people. Okay, and historically, there have been different mechanisms that you can use in order to extract and store wealth. All right, so you have maybe religion, okay? And so think of pyramids, right? Because pyramids in Egypt are able to focus your attention and motivate you to do certain actions, okay? To engage in religious worship. But really any temples. So that's one form of capital. Another form of capital, of course, is the idea of stories. Homer, right? Homer is the father of Greek civilization because he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, which is able to focus people's attention and drive them to great things. Then you, of course, in today's world, you have the Bible. And the main mechanism to extract and store wealth in today's world, of course, is the US dollar. But there's another force that's being created in order to replace the US dollar, and this is called artificial intelligence. All right, so what we'll discuss later on is that there's actually a war going on for the soul of humanity, for the human consciousness between the US dollar, the old world order, and artificial intelligence, the new world order, okay? But I want you to keep this in mind. So that's the first thing I want you to understand. Second thing that I need you to understand is that these people, we don't know who they are, okay? But what we do know is that they don't force us to do anything. There's not enough of them, okay? The way they maintain power is through manipulation and trickery and deception. And we know this because in Plato's Allegory of the Cave, one day, for whatever reason, one guy decides, you know what? I feel as though this is not the real world. I feel as though there's something outside this cave. So he or she starts messing around with the chains and realizes, these aren't chains. These are just like ropes. I can just like get rid of them. And this chain around my neck, it's like a ribbon. I can snap it off. And he doesn't know why he does this, but he does this. He does do this. And when he does this, they don't even care. Like, whatever, man, do whatever you want. And so he releases himself. He's blind because he's been in the dark all his life, but somehow he recognizes that there's this light, okay, outside the cave. And he is compelled to this light. So he's walking, stumbling to this light. And again, they are like watching him. They're like, we don't care. Do whatever you want, man. They don't stop him. He goes out into the light. And now he's outside. And it's pure light, okay? He's left the cave. And at first he's in pain. And he struggles to reorientate himself to this new world. But then eventually he falls in love with this world. It's a beautiful world. And it's like for him, heaven. And he's like, oh my God, this is the real world. The cave is a fake world that we created ourselves. Let me go back there and tell everyone about the truth. And when he goes back, the elite, don't stop him. Like, whatever you want, man, do whatever you want, okay? So they who are in power, you think they have an army, you think they have magic, and you think that they're evil, but really, all their power rests on our belief in their power, okay? They themselves don't have any power except to manipulate us, okay? That's something you need to understand. Now, the third thing you need to understand is that even though this is a fake world, people don't know this. They think it's real. In fact, they believe it is so real that they are willing to die for it. So that when this man who's seen heaven, who's seen the truth, who's come back to tell everyone, these chains that you have aren't real. We can break free and escape into the real world. If he dares to tell them this, together they will kill him. Okay, do you understand? So in other words, the reality is a hallucination. It's created by us, but we fall in love with it. We're so attached to it psychologically and emotionally that if anyone tells us it's fake, we kill them for it. Okay? So it's these three things I want you to keep in mind as we explore our world. Because our world is actually just Plato's cave. All right, so let me show you how. You need a force in order to create this reality, to chain us together, okay? And this force, of course, is called the American Empire, all right, the empire. Basically just the military. But they themselves don't really want to control this world because they're an army, okay? So what they do is they allow the creation of a financial order, a global financial order, which then constructs the game that we play, okay? And these people then construct the reality that we live in, okay? So this is the global financial order. And what is this global financial order? Well, at the very top is something called the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, okay? The central bank of central banks. Below them is the World Bank, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which controls the rules of the global financial order. And then below them are something called the central banks, okay? So the Federal Reserve in the United States, the People's Bank of China in China, okay? The Bank of England in England, okay? So together, they create the global financial order. And what is the global financial order? It's just to use the US dollar as a main mechanism of wealth extraction and wealth storage, okay? Really simple. The US dollar. Another way of understanding these people is to think of them as the game masters, okay? The ones above us who's constructed the game and controlling the rules of the game as we play it, okay? The game masters. Okay, so once the game has been created with the rules and incentives, now we can play the game. And this game is called the global economy. So when China trades with the United States, when you go off to Europe on vacation, you're all participating in a game created by the financial order, okay? And the purpose of this global economy is to have everyone play as much as possible so that wealth can be transferred from the world to the United States, the powers that be, okay?